As a police officer, I've experienced many disturbing and traumatic events. I haven't shared these experiences with many people, but now that I'm retired, I've decided to write down some of the ones that have stayed with me. One day, we responded to a call about an abandoned house where drug addicts were squatting. We had been waiting for a warrant to raid the house for months, and we were eager to take care of the situation. We surrounded the house with squad cars and a SWAT van. It was the middle of the day, but the occupants didn't seem to notice us. I wasn't on the front line, but I was with the SWAT team when they broke down the door. The SWAT team quickly secured the first floor, and then we moved down to the basement. The air in the basement was thick with the smell of feces. We followed the sound of shouting to a room where we found a SWAT member holding a man by the collar. The man had spat in the SWAT member's face, and the SWAT member was enraged. He slammed the man's head against the wall, knocking him unconscious. The other SWAT members quickly took their comrade away. We cautiously made our way further into the basement, and we came to a sight that made my blood run cold. There, in the center of the room, were 6 cribs, each one holding a malnourished and neglected child. The children were crying, and their cries were muffled by the pacifiers that had been forced into their mouths. Some of the children were tied up with bungee cords, and their bodies were covered in filth. I immediately scooped up one of the children, trying to comfort them as I removed the pacifier from their mouth. The child's cries were heartbreaking, but I couldn't help but hold them tighter. As I looked around at the other children, I could see the same look of horror on my partner's face. We called for backup, and soon the basement was filled with paramedics and social workers. The children were carefully taken away, and the house of horrors was eventually demolished. The investigation into the abuse would go on for months, but the memory of what we found that day would never be forgotten. I will never forget the look of the SWAT member's face when he saw those children. It was a look of pure, unadulterated rage, and I knew that he had seen something that would forever change him. The House of Horrors was a reminder of the depths of human depravity, but it was also a reminder of the resilience of the human spirit. Those children, despite all that they had been through, were still fighting to survive. I hope that they will find peace and happiness, and I will never stop hoping that the people who did this to them will be brought to justice. The night was still and silent. The only sound was the chirping of crickets and the rustling of leaves. I was driving with my girlfriend, Sarah, to our favorite spot in the woods. We had been dating for a few months and things were going great. We were both 18 and just out of high school, and we were enjoying our newfound freedom. We pulled up to the spot and turned off the headlights. We had been here many times before, and we knew it was safe. We got out of the car and walked into the woods, hand in hand. We found our usual spot and sat down on a blanket. We started talking and kissing, and soon we were lost in each other. We didn't notice the police car pull up until it was too late. The spotlight was blinding, and the sound of the sirens was deafening. We froze in fear, not knowing what to do. The police officers got out of the car and walked towards us. They were shining their flashlights in our faces, and we could barely see. "What are you doing here?" one of the officers asked. "We're just talking," Sarah said. "It's against the law to be in the woods after dark," the other officer said. "We didn't know," I said. "Well, you know now," the first officer said. The officers told us to get up and stand by the car. They patted us down and then handcuffed us. "What are you doing?" Sarah cried. "We're arresting you for trespassing and public indecency," the second officer said. We were taken to the police station, where we were booked and fingerprinted. We were then put in jail cells to wait for our bail hearing. I couldn't believe what was happening. We had done nothing wrong, and we were being treated like criminals. I spent the next few days in jail, scared and alone. I didn't know what was going to happen to me. Finally, the day of my bail hearing arrived. I was nervous, but I was also hopeful. I knew that I was innocent, and I was confident that the judge would see that. The judge listened to both sides of the case. He then asked me to stand up and face the court. "I find the defendant guilty of trespassing in public indecency," he said. I gasped. I couldn't believe it. "I sentence the defendant to 6 months in jail," the judge said. I was devastated. I had been sentenced to jail for something I didn't do. I was taken back to jail to serve my sentence. I spent the next 6 months behind bars, thinking about my life and what had gone wrong. Finally, the day of my release arrived. I was excited to get out of jail and start my life over again. I walked out of the jail doors and into the sunlight. I took a deep breath of fresh air and felt a sense of relief. I was a new police officer, just out of training and ready to show my worth. I was working the night shift, driving around on the quiet, empty Highway 66. The highway was known for being spooky, with tall pine trees casting long shadows in the moonlight. It was a night with a lot of wind and rain. The wind was howling like a crazy person, and the rain was hitting my windshield so hard I could barely see. I was driving carefully, trying to see through the darkness. All of a sudden, my headlights caught something moving in the distance. A person was standing on the side of the road, waving their arms for help. I pulled over my police car, my heart beating fast. As I got closer to the person, I noticed something strange. They were wearing old-fashioned clothes, and their face was pale and thin, almost like a ghost. It looked like they had come from another time. "Do you need help?" I asked, my voice shaking a little. The person nodded, their eyes big with fear. "Please," they whispered, "come with me." I wasn't sure what to do. The person looked scary, but I couldn't just leave them there. "Where do you want me to go?" I asked. The person pointed to a dark, winding road that went into the woods. I was very scared, but I knew I had to help. I turned my police car onto the narrow road, the headlights barely cutting through the thick fog that covered the woods. The person followed close behind, their footsteps echoing in the quiet. The road went deeper into the woods, the trees getting taller and closer together, blocking out the moonlight. I felt more and more scared, but I kept going, wanting to know what was ahead. When we got to a clearing, I saw something. A group of people stood in the middle of the clearing, their faces twisted in fear. They were all wearing the same old-fashioned clothes as the person who had led me there. The person stopped and turned to face me, their eyes glowing with an eerie light. "Welcome," they said, their voice like a scratchy whisper. I tried to back up my police car, but it was too late. The ground under my tires turned to mud, and the car sank deeper and deeper. When I opened my eyes, I was back in my police car, the headlights cutting through the darkness. The clearing and the people in it were gone, replaced by the familiar sight of the highway. I let out a sigh of relief, still feeling a bit confused. I had no idea what had just happened, but I was grateful to be alive. I turned my car around and headed back to the police station, the events of the night still fresh in my mind. As I drove, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had been spared. The people in the clearing had looked so hungry and desperate, but they had not hurt me. I wondered if they had seen something in me, something that made them see me as a friend, not an enemy. I never learned the truth about what happened that night, but I never forgot it either. The experience had changed me, making me realize that there is more to the world than we can ever know. And it had taught me the importance of compassion, even in the face of fear.